Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Can you go? Are you recording on your end too?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Give me 1 second.
Hello. Hey.
Okay, so I'm just gonna pick random people who have questions. So who has the first
First of all, it's awesome to be talking to you. This is kind of like an out of body experience. Um,
Appreciate it.
will you tell us your opinion?
I need a more of a specific question.
Uh, who do you think? Who's your best guess as to who did it and how
Well,
and when?
well, I, it's there's so many nuances in this case. When it comes to actually who did the murder, um, I'm gonna have to side with the GBI on this and say that none of the top POIs have been eliminated. But when was it done? I think Tara was based on my 11 years involved in the case. I think by 12:30 or 1 o'clock a.m., which would actually been Sunday morning after midnight Saturday, I think she was dead.
Right.
Uh, but there's a lot of there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that leans various people way. One thing interesting about that question is in numerous interviews, Rothwell, former GBI agent, stated, well, he said, it's unfortunate that some of these people, have been cast, a lot has been cast on them that hurts their lives and stuff like that. Um, but actually, the GBI could really uh, could do something about that uh, if they really wanted to. I mean, they could come out and say, "Well, we've done an exhaustive investigation on this person. The DNA didn't match from the glove. They passed a polygraph. The partial fingerprint from the glove didn't match them, and they have an alibi, so we clear them."
Right.
But the GBI's not done that on anyone.
Who's Michelle Lowe? Your question?
Thank you very much for the question.
Was him? You submitted on email? Okay. You can come here and ask him if you want. We had a couple other people. So.
Hi, I was just wondering about, and we've kind of already, I guess, answered it about just accounting for Sean Fletcher's whereabouts and what, with or without Marcus Harper, not thinking that I did it, but possibly being an accomplice if Marcus Harper did it. Um, and, were there any type of security cameras around in the city that would confirm his whereabouts? Because I think he had called in a certain call where he was checking doors and windows and just making sure places were secure. And that kind of stood out to me a little bit, if he had the potential to be an accomplice,
What is it?
it kind of would account, doesn't account for his whereabouts other than him calling it in.
What is your name?
Michelle Lowe?
Okay, thanks for the question. Well, he was actually doing just a routine a store beat. He was on the store beat, a walking beat when he got that call. Um, when the dispatcher called Fletcher to tell him that Marcus wanted him to pick him up at the station. Um, One interesting thing about that phone call is, being a former police officer myself, and Harper had been a former police officer too, is he called the dispatcher. He didn't call Fletcher straight on his cell phone. So he knew for he did that on purpose, or for whatever reason, that he knew there would be a counting of a log of that phone call to the dispatcher. As far as what Fletcher was doing before Marcus called him, I don't know. I think it's pretty well detailed on the dispatch logs. But Fletcher was interviewed and he passed a polygraph.
Okay,
And
okay.
and so I'm I don't know. Um, but the thing about and I've expressed this before, um, that it's really, in my opinion, it's really not when Marcus was with Fletcher, because the people who listen to this podcast and everything, and then about this case, see that as a alibi, right? Well,
Yes.
if he used Fletcher as an alibi, then why wouldn't you want that time with Fletcher to be accounted for, right? So,
I just
so the point is, so it's not when he was with Fletcher, it's when he wasn't with Fletcher.
Yes, I was just also thought it was strange that it would not be in the police force is best, oh, how am I trying to say this? In their best regard to let someone who'd been at a bar potentially drinking go out, with them on runs.
Well,
I mean, that just,
that's the thing
and I mean, I,
about small town, and he former worked there. They all knew him, and it's Scylla. I mean, it's just not Scylla. A lot of small towns do that. So I don't see any problem with that, um, unless there was a car wreck with the liability insurance and stuff like that. But I don't see any problem with them letting him in, because they all knew him, known him for years, and he's a former cop. So, but the point is, it's not really when Harper was with Fletcher. It's really when he wasn't with him.
and that's what I was kind of trying to get at was, was there, I know that there was the one call where they know he was with Benny Merritt, but, these other times, when say Fletcher was alone, is there something proving that he was alone and that
I
maybe he
mean,
was?
he was alone.
Okay,
That's
okay.
not in my opinion. I mean, we know that around 1:45 he was possibly with Fletcher, but what was he doing before he got to the bar, or what time did he leave the bar? Was he leave at 12:30 and have an hour to do something?
No, I
Or
don't
did
think he was with them when it all happened, but I was just, was there any pockets of windows when he could have said he was checking on something and maybe helping him out to dispose of a body?
And there's been some misstatements. His lawyer, Harper's lawyer, put him leaving the bar between 1 and 1:30. In one interview, and I've posted this before, in one interview, Rothwell said he left about 2. So, but he's made a couple misstatements in the case about that. So I'm not quite sure. Um, but I would tend to believe what his attorney was saying, between 1 and 1:30 when he left the bar. Of course, that's a big time gap.
who's Elliot?
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Is that you? Elliot? You Elliot? Okay. Any other questions for you? Anything else? Yeah. Say your name.
Okay, Elliot Robinson, Decatur. Uh, Given the amount of law enforcement involved in this, I guess, case, um, what what has to be the level of probable cause in order to compel them to have DNA submitted and to be tested? Because we know, like you mentioned before, it's a small town. GBI, I guess, has an office that's in that area, and so
Perry.
in Perry,
Yeah.
and so I mean, does it have to be beyond a reasonable doubt where they pretty much know we've got a body and we just kind of tying it up? Because, like you said, it would kind of help to eliminate a lot of people from the case. I would imagine Marcus has DNA since he used to be a former officer. The gentleman from Perry as well. You just kind of get rid of them. So what's kind of like the
Well,
I guess the
all
practice?
these people were swabbed, and there were no match.
But now, were they swabbed? I know you mentioned in one of the cases there are different databases
Yeah,
also as well.
they there's the state of Georgia database.
Right.
The thing about the state of Georgia, unlike my state of North Carolina, which changed in 2011, and also Texas changed in 2011, and this is something that you could try to petition to have. The legislature in Georgia has tried to change this, but it was fought back. In the state of Georgia, in a lot of states, to be swabbed, you have to be convicted of a crime, felony. In my state here in North Carolina and Texas, and like 18, 19 other states, you only have to be arrested for a crime to be swabbed. And in Texas, when they passed that you only have to be arrested, they identified 100 rapists. One guy who was a family man with children, married, good job, he got separated, got behind on child support. They swabbed him because he was arrested for back child support. He was identified as a prolific serial killer. So, so the point is that uh, if you believe that the DNA on the glove the white male DNA on the glove is linked somehow to the killer, then that person has never been convicted in the state of Georgia, and also it's been entered into the federal DNA database CODIS. So it's just setting the DNA from the glove is just setting out there, uh, in CODIS in the state, and it's just waiting for somebody somewhere in the United States to enter it to get a hit.
And so no officers have been swabbed, or have they been, or have all the officers?
It's Fletcher, Dykes, Harper. All those people have been swabbed. Now, uh, if you talk about some other officers, I don't know of any. I would say that Langford um, uh, was swabbed, Michael Langford, but anyone else, I'm not quite sure why they would be swabbed. You'd have to give me what would put them or bring them to light to make them be swabbed. I mean, you just can't randomly swab officers. You see what I mean?
Right.
because Troy Davis had a barbecue. He refused to swab.
Well, yeah, which, okay.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, no problem.
Have they thought about doing familial DNA testing on the glove?
Uh, did I hear a question?
Have they thought about doing familial DNA testing on the glove?
You might want to come to the chair.
No, what the DEI is doing, we would
Because
assume
that
that
could really
Well, it has been done.
oh, the familial.
The only thing that has not been done, and it's not a standard in law enforcement, it would have to be done by somebody on the outside. If you could get hold of uh, the DNA profile, is the ancestry, the genealogy uh, thing to see if there's some type of genealogy, somebody in the database that might have a family member linked to the glove somehow. That's not been done, but familiar DNA has been done. The thing about that is, familiar DNA, the person would have to have a relative that you get a partial, because a familiar DNA is only a partial hit. That person would have to have been convicted of a crime in Georgia, and then you would have to walk it back from that person to keep walking it back to see if you can link somebody to Tara. That's how that works.
got one more question for you.
John Stever from Valdosta, Georgia. So my question that I sent an email about is I normally don't listen to crime podcasts, but after I got hooked on Up and Vanished, I went back and I listened to Serial season 1, and I was super disappointed that they never actually solved the case by the end of the first season. And I mean, yeah, I learned a lot, but nothing was ever really resolved. And I'm wondering, and this is for you and for Payne, are you worried that the case will not be solved by the end of season 1? And if it's not solved, do you think that damages the power or the credibility of the podcast?
Well, first of all, I've been on the case since the end of February of '06, so I'm not worried about any of that. The good,
Right. Yeah, I was more thinking of Payne.
uh,
I was more thinking
so
of Payne because he.
the only good thing about it is these podcasts can be replayed by anyone, and so you never know who's going to do something a year from now to go on there and, in the confines of their own home, that knows something and listens to this podcast, and it starts making them think, say, okay, to myself, I want to go ahead and come forward. And it might be a year or two after the podcast is over with on the Terror case. So as long as the podcast stays available for the general public to hear, there's always a possibility that somebody will listen to it and it starts them worrying.
Well, Payne, for you, I know when this started, you said, I want to solve this case. I want to find out what happened to Terry Grinstead. So I want to direct the same question to you.
Um, it's like the very end question. I, how you gonna end this? My friend the other day is like, you got this Area 8 problem. Like, how you gonna end this? So, in a non-joking way, I mean, I want to solve it. I have two answers to that question. Um, the good news, I'm gonna do good news and bad news. The bad news is, I don't think that the podcast will solve this, and that's for two reasons. Because I'm still actively investigating this, and there is a lot of information that I have not put in the podcast yet. Not just to hold it back from you guys, but because it would jeopardize what I'm doing right now. And if somebody knew that I was looking into them hard like that, they would stop talking to me forever, and we may never know anything. And so there's little things that are been kind of mentioned here and there, and there'll be more names too. And um, the best way to put it is, basically, there's going to be a a television series that we're working on for Up and Van, and it's going to be basically the visual form of the podcast. So I say that the podcast wouldn't solve this because it would be solved in 2 weeks, and I can't promise that I'm going to go find the killer, but I promise that I will do my best to tell you what I think happened.
I think awareness of the case, uh, through the podcast, or it has more to do about anything than trying to solve it with the podcast.
Cool. Cool.
I think that we'll uncover enough to get the police digging in this direction. Because at the end of the day, I can't arrest anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I'm going to find the DNA and I'm going to test it, because I don't
Right.
have the DNA. So,
Yeah.
I have to do my best, really, as like a citizen, just like you guys, to expose the truth or squeeze out a confession or have someone cough up some information. That's what I'm looking for, and I'm positioning myself to be able to do that with
Cool.
my whole heart. So, good
Awesome.
question,
Yeah.
Peyton. It's like, how you gonna end this? So who is Susan Brown Townsend? Okay. Okay.
Can I please just 5 seconds with Maurice, please?
5 seconds. Okay.
Okay, 5 seconds. Okay, Maurice, I've discussed earlier with Payne,
Could I have your name,
the
please?
neighbor. Yeah, Dana.
Okay.
I discussed earlier with Payne, actually today, about the neighbor, Joe Portier. Like you said, I know it's kind of like a vague question, but I've given some of my information that I know from a couple of people. Could I just get a quick um, synopsis from you? I mean, I have some information about him. I have a theory. I think he was obsessed with her. I think he had a situation where he possibly had an addiction.
That's not
His
an answer to my question. I'm sorry. Like,
what? How do you feel? I mean, how do you feel about the situation with him? I feel like he played a big important part of that, of what happened to her
Well,
that
I think
night.
he's definitely um, he's shown some very suspicious behavior.
Understood.
There's no doubt about it. He refused to speak to me. The only thing that he did, I mean, washing the car on Wednesday was a big mistake. After Tara's dad told him not to. Uh, but also you have to understand, really, he's the one that brought attention to the fact that there was something wrong at the house that Monday morning. Now that may have been prompted by Miss Faye's call Sunday, late Sunday night. Um, probably after midnight she called. Uh, but but he didn't do anything that night. Uh,
At
uh,
what they had implemented in place for that didn't work as far as their system.
but what he told to me is that his house and window faced Tara's bedroom window, that one side there, and
Hmm.
he told me, he said that damn screen had been like that for a long time.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying the screen is related to the case or not, but it is related to the house.
Right,
And GBI dismissed it because they said a cobweb
right.
was on it. Um,
Well, she had also decided to change the bolt locks on the door too, I think,
well, yeah,
prior.
yeah,
So they
yeah.
just weren't. Yeah,
I've posted that picture before.
right,
Well, she didn't have deadbolts on the car. It was only the
right.
doorknob that had a lock on it. That was sitting on her kitchen table. Uh, it's my understanding that she thought there was too many people who had keys to the house.
Which he
Well, he
was one
did,
of.
but she could have asked for that back. So there must have been that she was worried about more than just him having a key.
Understood.
Um,
Thank you very much
well,
for
I
clarifying.
hadn't finished.
Oh, okay. I'm just looking at Payne and I'm like, oh,
I
I'm
mean,
taking up too much
you
time.
drove to Atlanta. You want a question answered, right?
Thank
Uh,
you,
uh,
Maurice. Thank you,
so
Dr. Godwin.
I think you know, he's never been considered at the level of Dykes and Harper
Right.
and Vickers. He's never been at that level, uh, and maybe he should be.
I agree. I agree, 100%. Thank you very much for your
Okay.
time. It's
Well,
it's an honor.
let me expand a little bit on the window. So he said that window had been like that for a long time. So and that's the window where the lamp was at.
Correct.
And that screen was almost falling off. So he just allowed this single woman with the screen half hanging off like that.
Right.
He didn't do anything. He just allowed it to stay like that for a long time.
Well,
Um, uh,
somebody that had her best interest at heart wasn't looking out for her. So
I
I'm
agree.
just saying. Thank you
Mm,
very, very
you're
much,
welcome.
Dr.
Thank
Godwin.
you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Hey Maurice, my name is Stephanie Osteen. I'm from Sunbury, Georgia. I have just a few questions. The first one is this has always bothered me, and I'm sure the answer is out there, but since you've been on the case since '06, when her mother called Heath and asked Heath to go do the safety check, and he went into the safety check, what was the follow up to mom from that? I mean, did he tell her, the car this is still in the driveway. The dog's still in the backyard that she normally brought in. What was the follow up for that with the mom, or did he just go back to bed and say, "Oh, she's not there"? I mean,
Well, we don't have the phone records so we don't know actually if he made the phone call back. Uh, but he didn't do a safety check. He didn't do a wellness check at all for like a 10, 11-year veteran at that time as a detective. It was the worst wellness check that I've ever seen in the history of policing, especially with
okay,
somebody you supposedly love and were having an affair with and a longtime family friend. Um, he makes all these phone calls who supposedly express some type of concern or worrying about her, where she was at all day Sunday. That's based on Rothwell's statement. But
okay.
then,
So you never talked. I'm
but
sorry.
then when he gets to the house, he does nothing but leave a business card.
Right. So you didn't talk to the mom,
Yeah,
and she never.
I interviewed her. I interviewed Miss Fay at the Terror Center. The only thing that I made mistakes in this case. There's no doubt about it. But you have to understand, in 2017, I've got the hindsight of 11 years.
Right.
And what I knew in '06, because it was I mean, it was really fluid back then going on. I did not ask a lot of the proper questions that I should have to Miss Fay that I would now, and I'm not quite sure if I had asked the proper questions that I would have been allowed to continue talking to her.
Right.
I,
Okay.
I'm just saying that.
Hey, I'm Carly from Tifton, Georgia. Do you know why Miss Bay didn't go herself?
Well,
If she was so concerned?
hour and 20 minute drive, late at night, uh, elderly. Um, I'm not quite sure why she didn't call the Gaddises.
Yeah, well, I mean that, but if Heath is driving from Perry, you go through Hawkinsville
Yeah,
to get to Priscilla. I mean, I'm a mom. My child, if I'm so worried, come pick me up. Take me with you. You know, if you're going to go check on my child.
I agree. I agree. It's
That's just very strange to me.
or call the Gaddises, right?
Yeah, yeah. Call somebody close. They can get there right there.
But all these phone calls
Yeah.
that were made, supposedly over the concern of her on, all day Sunday and all thing. I've seen no evidence that the Gaddises were called by Heath. I've seen no evidence that her friend Maria was called by Heath. And these are
Mhm.
people that you would think. Now Miss Fay did call Joe,
Yeah.
uh, and the reason why she couldn't get him earlier in the day Sunday is he was out at his little 2 acre farm outside of Vasilla, and they got back, I think probably 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then she got hold of him after then. Um,
Yeah.
but all these people making phone calls, it seems to me that they were not calling the correct people.
Yeah. I mean, me being a mother, even elderly, can't drive, whatever. If I called somebody in Perry and they're coming through my town, you're going to pick me up and we're going to go find my child. I mean, that's just me being a mother.
I agree, and like I said, I'm not quite sure why the Gaddises were not called. But if you're
Mhm.
going to use Heath because he's in law enforcement, then
Mhm.
then at least pick me up and carry me, or at least touch base with me
Yeah.
and let me know uh, how she was, what went on at the house. Because
Yeah.
even if he did get back in touch with her, the only thing he could tell her is her car was home, no lights except for the little Halloween things outside, and I left a business card. That's all he could say, right?
Yeah, and if I was her mother, that would, I mean,
That,
I would, that wouldn't be enough for
I
me. I
totally
mean,
agree. It's very suspicious. Yes.
yeah.
Thank you. I think some more questions. You can always call one email, so don't raise your hand if you have any good questions you want to ask those. Sure.
I've just always wondered if you think that Tara could have driven to the bar where, what's his name? Where Marcus Harper was.
What's your name?
My name is Lauren Atkins.
Um, um, this.
If she could have left the
Oh, I
barbecue
understand.
and driven
Oh,
out
I
to that
understand.
bar, yeah.
This is one of my first things that I tried to look into when I got there, because I'm the one that pushed. GBI had not interviewed Megan Evans, and I'm the one that pushed, and finally they showed up at her apartment door. I talked to Megan one time, but it wasn't only about 5 minutes. This was in '06, about April of '06. Her mama found out about it, and she wouldn't talk to me anymore. Uh, Megan phoned Tara. Megan went on to a pageant discussion group in '06, and she posted that she was one of the last three people to talk to Tara, but then it was deleted about a week later. So Megan spoke to Tara that night. It's always been my belief, and she was at the White Horse, and she's actually Marcus's cousin.
Interesting.
And so she called Tara. Do I think that there's a good possibility that she told Tara that Marcus was at the White Horse Saloon? Absolutely. Do
Yeah.
I think with the what limited emails that you've seen, which they came from me, uh, that you've seen, the emotional state. Do I think that Tara would drive to the White Horse? Absolutely. Uh, But you know, but Megan's I tried to touch me, but she blocked me on Facebook. She won't have anything to do. She's married now with kids, but so there's nothing I can do anymore on that. But there's a very good possibility that that phone call may have drawn her to the White Horse Saloon. Yes.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name's Josh Combs, and I'm from Atlanta. So I was just wondering what your theory is as to why Troy Davis was unwilling to take a swab, or whether you feel like that's suspicious at all, and whether there's any connection between the fact that him, and it was Joe, the neighbor, were both at her house previously whenever she had that breakdown.
Well, Troy originally he uh, he knew who I was because he refused to speak to me. But I knew in '06 there was only one person who refused to be swabbed, and it was Troy Davis. But based on my conversations with GBI, although I don't know how they got his DNA, they were able to eventually get it. It didn't match, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything neither. And also, him and Troy are best golfing buddies, and so and they're on each other's Facebook page and stuff. Troy is definitely very suspicious. You always look at the last person to see somebody alive, and you always look at the first person who brings attention to the event that something is wrong. So he was the last person. Troy was the last person to see her alive, and Joe was the person who initially brought attention that something was wrong with Tara. In regards to yes, Troy was the one that carried her. She had this emotional breakdown back when Harper called her when she was on the way to school. Uh, she had a breakdown, but he said it's over with, it's done, and so she pulled over to historical to drive. Deanna and Larry Harper, Marcus's dad and stepmother, picked her up. I went and picked her up and brought her back. Troy is the one that carried her into the house. And Joe and Troy stayed in the house for a long time until she was able to go lay down and calm down.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Maurice, John. Just a quick question. If you were to determine that the glove is just a plant and it was to deliberately lead investigators on a DNA hunt that isn't going to yield anything, would you agree that that was a well planned or at least a planned event? And that if that's the case, who would you say that would lead you to decide?
Well, now I could be. Thank you for the question. I could be totally wrong about this, but I believe since '07 that the person who did this has law enforcement knowledge. Uh, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, um, the only thing about the glove being planted, you would have to know that the DNA on the glove that you put there had they had never been swabbed before. That's the only key thing you would have to know. Now, it could come from an elderly person or someone like that. But you would have to know that the person has never been arrested for it. And also, it's my understanding, Rothwell's argument against me and the planted glove theory is that the glove is linked back to Tara somehow. So the only thing that you could say about that is forensically, and there's a partial print on it, but partial prints can't be entered into the federal database APHIS. Uh, so it's a very, and I think, and this happens in a lot of other cases, that DNA waiting for DNA match makes investigators lazy. They stopped doing shoe leather work and stop asking questions, and they just sat around waiting for a DNA match. And that's unfortunate in a lot of cases, and also this case. Um, and you had another question with that. What was it?
It was, if it was a planned event, a planned murder, who would that lead you to believe that would be most likely?
Well, there's three people with law enforcement experience. You got Marcus, who was a former police officer. You got Dykes, who's a veteran detective, and then you've got the stepfather of the dog owner, Bruce Willis, who is a crime scene expert and a skeleton remains type expert, retired from the GBI. It was his stepson, uh, uh, who dog she was looking after that evening, and it was his other stepson who picked up the dog that evening. Uh, so you got three. I'm not saying he's a suspect. I'm just saying that you got three people there close with this case that are crime scene experts.
Maurice, just one more question from me. Were there two different sets of dogs that hit at Snapdragon?
Well, one thing that had never been mentioned, and I don't know if Payne knows this. And I know the dog owner that he was talking to. That dog owner hit. There was a dog, and might have been his dog too. There was an outhouse that wasn't involved in the fire, like a well cover that was the hit on. But I was told that was because they used to have parties at this house, and and women would go and, and and use the bathroom in this little outhouse type, not outhouse but pump house, and they may have been on the menstrual cycles and stuff, and the dog was hitting uh, at that pump house on that. But the dog hit on potential something within the fire itself, yes, and that was turned over to the GBI. Yes, the only thing about Snapdragon that you really just have to consider, and I think it's suspicious, and I think we don't ever until this case is solved, we really won't know until if what Snapdragon link to this case is. But there was no attention to Snapdragon Road until the fire. So you have to ask yourself this question: why would somebody bring attention to Snapdragon because there was no attention brought to that area before the fire? Now, I was a part of the search team who drained the pond behind Snapdragon. Now, the argument to my own argument there, it may have been that the elderly owner that lived in Florida, maybe she was coming back for Thanksgiving and to the house there, the old home place, and maybe the person didn't want something to be found out at the place, so it was burned before she was able to get back to the house for Thanksgiving, right? I mean, that's a possibility. So I'm just countering my own argument there.
I have a question, and I keep posting it several times. I know I've asked about the ponds, the rivers, the waters that have been searched, which ones where. Do we know outside of the counties where have been searched, areas, wildlife management areas, specific?
I don't think there have been. Crystal Lake was searched. That's where they found what they thought was that T-shirt, whatever, but it wasn't linked to her. I don't think any had been searched at all. And we know that Hilton was a wildlife officer person. So, and I don't know specifically where Hilton and Harper was at Sunday night. Now he got a call, Hilton did, for spotlighting. Somebody was spotlighting deer. So Hilton calls up Marcus to go ride with him, is what the word is. So, but I don't know where they went to. It would be interesting to find out where Hilton and Marcus went to.
And And the only reason I question the wildlife management area is because I was telling a friend about this, and her husband was listening, and he used to work with Marcus, and so they would travel back and forth a lot together. And he said that Marcus made in passing a reference when they were coming back home, passing through Baxley and the Altamaha River and all that runs near past the wildlife management area. They were like, you could bury somebody over there and they never find them. Just one of those off chances, random things. I was like, well, has anybody ever said anything to anybody? He's like, no, I just kept it to myself. So I didn't know if
That's very interesting.
Yeah, well, I was like, oh my God, we busted the case. We done found her. I lost my mind. Yeah, so.
But that would take take a massive undertaking.
Oh, listen, I done Google searched and found where Altamaha run into Mulgee, and you got Baxley, and US 1. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that's the only reason I asked that.
Another 2 or 3 years, you might find me out there.
Now you wait a little while. I'm gonna be out there Sunday. Like we don't find her here. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
I have a question. I'm just kidding. Cool. We're going to conclude this part of it, but thank you, sir. Unless you have anything else you want to add to the audience here today.
I don't think so. I appreciate you listening to the podcast, and it's been very interesting travel, and this has been very frustrating for me. And I've been ridiculed in the past, and still getting it on the discussion boards. But in '05 and '06, I mean, back then it was the court TV discussion boards, and I mean the nastiness got so bad back then that court TV had to shut it down for 2 or 3 days until people could behave themselves. And based on what I know from the current posters now on discussion, it's the same two or three people. So, but I appreciate being able to talk to you about this case. Okay, do
Thanks,
you have
man.
a question?
Now
Now
no,
tell them the truth now. Tell them the truth. Because I saw your post a couple of days ago on Twitter about you almost didn't take this case because you were scared or something.
No, not the case. I almost didn't make a podcast.
Yeah, almost didn't. Yeah, that's right. But
Yeah.
just be honest. I'm just kidding. But who called you multiple times? You were always in the gym, and you were you were
There was this old guy that like kept bothering me and like blowing me
you were
up.
in other meetings, and
You got pissed at me one time
more than
actually.
once.
Yeah. Actually, my friend was with me. I played the voice note. I was like, dude, who is that guy? I'm like, he's cool, man. Like, we're trying to figure this out.
I
Like,
did push you, didn't I?
you did.
Yeah.
Well, there was a while where I was like, I was busy doing stuff. And you're like, oh, you quitting the case? And I'm like, no, I haven't even made a podcast yet.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out my life.
I understand.
But no, thank you for pushing me to do it, though. But yeah, I did what I said, right?
That's right.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I appreciate y'all.
Well,
and if you have any questions, just feel free to go to and ask on the Q&A question. I'll be glad to answer it.
we really don't know yet. We're still looking, but yes, when we do know, I'll let you know.
But if you have any
Cool.
other questions, I can. And like he said, there's a lot more information that that's not been put out there. Oh, another thing I'd like to say is that the genealogy of most everybody that's associated with this case, I've explored over 10 and a half years. I mean, I know cousins of cousins of cousins, you know, everybody like that, and some shouldn't even be cousins. But I've looked at everybody heritage into there, and it's just mind-boggling. Really, there's probably 75 to 100 people surrounding this case.
Yep. A lot of names.
Okay. Well, you take care, and I'll see y'all later.
Thanks, man.
Okay, bye-bye.
Appreciate it.